Hello, Namaste. Thank you for tuning into Quantum Investing channel. This is your host, Sarath Chalam. Today, we're going to talk to a guest. Before I introduce her, I would ask you to smash that like button, share, and also subscribe to my channel. This is really important for this YouTube algorithm to bring my videos up. So the guest we're going to talk to is, she has done many fix and flip, wholesaling, and also a great teacher. She is a giving person. She is a strong believer in LIT, which is learn, implement, and teach. I'm part of a group with her, and she is always a giving person. She would like to always share and also learn from others at the same time. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together to welcome Marsha. Hello, Marsha. How are you doing?
I'm awesome. How are you today?
I'm doing good.
Yay.
Thank you for coming onto the show.
Yeah, you bet.
Let's start with, how did you get into real estate?
I was tearing apart my own house and I was at a party and somebody handed their business card to me and it was remodeling. I was like, hey, I just tore my house apart and now I can't get it back together. Will you help me? And that particular person was in real estate investing and a licensed general contractor. And then it just kind of evolved from there. So I quit University of Phoenix about 3.5 years ago, and I've been doing real estate investing ever since. And I did about 12 to 14 flips. I kind of lost track, honestly, because I was working on a couple of them myself. Not a good idea. But in the beginning, you're tempted, so you kind of do it a little bit, right? And now I'm currently doing studying notes. So I'm still in real estate investing, but now I'm studying notes.
Great. So can you walk us through the very first flip you have done? What did you see? What did you learn? What are the challenges?
It was a property that another investor had on their list, right? So it was pretty gross. It was 23rd Avenue and Pierce, I believe.
In Phoenix.
So it's in the real central Phoenix area. And whoever had lived there, it was trashed. There was stuff in there up to my thighs, and just walking through it, the roaches would just take off. Every step you took, you had to watch where you were going. There was a lot of mold, termites. Oh my Lord, the termites were horrible. So we had to gut the whole thing, tear it all out, clean it all up. And we went through a couple of contractors on that experience because it was pretty rough. And it was in a rough area of town, but even still, didn't get any of our stuff stolen. There was one night we accidentally left all of our stuff outside. Surprisingly, it was there the next day. So, but it was from an investor is how we found it, and tore it down to the studs and rebuilt it.
So what are the challenges? You said the challenges, I guess, but what did you learn from the first one?
You have to pay your guys pretty good. If you don't pay them well, what happens is they drift off to another job that pays them better. So there's got to be a medium between retail and wholesale, because they're all looking for a job too. But if you pay them too low, they'll go to this job. If you pay them too much, you don't make a profit. So there's a fine balance. So what I learned was you have to really negotiate the rates and kind of get into your contractors' heads. You really do have to get to know them in order to be able to protect them and provide for them. Like if you're willing to show up every day, I'm willing to pay you more. But if you're going to keep dipping, then you're not on the next job.
You hire a general contractor and let him control things, or you take control and each thing, let's say plumber, as a woodwork or anything, flooring, carpet, painters, you look for different contractors. How do you work?
I'll let the general contractor do all of that. But as a business partner, if I see a particular contractor's really not doing what they're supposed to be doing, like showing up, it's like, fire them, get another one. It's a business. And what I learned was, again, if you pay them the right way, you don't really have those problems. It's a really fine line, though, I got to tell you, Sarath, because if you pay them too much, you don't make a profit. If you pay them too little, they disappear. So you use the general contractor. The general contractor will find the plumbers. the drywallers, the mudders, the painters, getting the kitchen put back together and installing the cabinets. So the general contractor does all the babysitting. General contractor does all the searching and looking for all those individuals. And your general contractor is really like a project manager also. They know what needs to be done in line. So you don't have to like tear out a whole wall because you didn't do the plumbing yet. You know what I mean? So everything has to be done in a certain time frame.
How do you choose the general contractor? You stick to only one, or you have few you can
Um, you
pick
got to
up
try
from?
them. Yeah, you got to try them on like pants. You just got to try them on until you get a pair that you really like. Um, my first general contractor is super, super, super smart, but the project management side of it was a little slow. The second general contractor I've run into with a builder's license is super fast. So you do have to go through a couple of them, and you have to be careful how you pay them because they want money up front for materials. So you have to have some sort of a idea of what the materials are going to cost.
So do you think they should have a license for sure, or it's okay to, as they're managing it on, and probably if somebody is injured, I think you should be a part of the liability too, right? So
Yeah.
how do you deal that? What should we look for usually for this contracting and everything?
If you're not making any major changes to the house, then you can just use subcontractors. They don't have to be licensed. But if you're doing anything major to the house, like you're redoing the plumbing or you're adding on a room or the electric panel, if it has to be moved. If you're doing anything major like that, it's best to have a licensed general contractor because then if anything goes wrong down the road, I believe it's 3 years down the road, it's their license, not my business. Because I don't have a license, so I don't lose a license. But I don't want to lose my business because I didn't have a licensed general contractor.
Once we sell the house, once the rehab it is done and sell it, are we liable, you're saying, if something is wrong?
The
Or
general contractor is liable for their labor and their work. I believe it's up to 3 years. I'd have to double check.
right.
So 3 years from now, if you redid plumbing, for example, and 3 years from now, the plumbing blew out of the back of the house, that general contractor could be looked up and could be held liable for that. There is the licensed general contractors are the ones taking the biggest risk. So it's in their best interest to make sure it's done right. And so far, I've dealt with 3 different general contractors, and all 3 of them operate on a really high level of integrity. So you know, and that makes sense, right? Because if they do it right, then they don't have to worry about that whole, well, what if something happens later? Well, it won't because they did it right. You know what I mean?
How about the design change? Let's say in the kitchen or like, master bath or something, the colors, the how the design look, and you want up the upscale that, right? Like the whole kitchen and all. Who decides that? Do you participate or the general contractor, or you have a designer, architect, something? How does it work?
You can go a lot of different ways on that. An architect would be very pricey, and you only need an architect if you're starting to do like major, like, oh, we're going to blow out this whole wall. We're going to take this ceiling right up to the rafters and do the vaulted ceiling. Then you need an architect. Hopefully, you don't have to do that much work, but if you do, it's good to get an architect or at least a draftsman. And that can be pricey. That can be around $3,000-$4,000 just for that. As far as design goes and colors and tile and countertops and cabinets and style of cabinets and the knobs and all that stuff, a lot of times it's the general contractor. And what's cool about that is a general contractor knows what's going to work and what's going to fit. And sometimes a designer is like, oh, this is pretty, but it doesn't fit.
Got
So
it.
it's kind of good that they work together. And a lot of times it'll be like if I purchase the home and I have a licensed general contractor, we'll work together and pick stuff out together. And sometimes we'll do it separate and I'll show up and go, here's the flooring I picked, figure it out. It's better to work with the general contractor because then they can let you know, yeah, that won't work in that space. It won't fit. Or that particular shower head, when you put it in, it's not going to do the gooseneck you want it to. It's going to get stuck.
They know
So
the
it's kind
technical.
of good to, yeah.
So how do the contracts work with the contractors? And so how do the things work?
What
Talk,
you wanted, everything needs to be in black and white
right?
and you need to agree to it. And you need to have the terms, when the draws will be. Like if I'm the money, or even if, Joe is the money and Joe is, following up on, then there has to be, and even your hard money lenders will do this, there are draws. So if you get all the walls torn out and you get all the insulation in and all the drywall up and all the mudding done, okay, now it's time for another draw. So you can go get the flooring and the appliances and the countertop. And then when you get so far into that, there's another draw. There's usually 3 to 6 draws depending on the project, but you never ever want to give contractors or general contractors all the money up front. Never. You give them just enough to pay their bills and to get supplies. And you put that in the contract. So the terms are there, whether you want them fixed or whether you want them flexible. And if your contractor is constantly like, I needed to hurry up and do a draw now. Well, you're not done. Yeah, but I ran out of money. I need a draw now. You've got a problem.
So how do you maintain the log and everything on this?
All the receipts.
Progress.
Even a quick trip to Home Depot and just go up and down the aisles will give you a real good idea of how much materials will be, because the materials that they purchase are significantly less than the Home Depot prices, and because they know where general contractors, they know where to get supplies super cheap. They know where the plumbing houses are, they call them plumb house, but they know where the plumbing warehouses are, electrical. They know where to get their stuff dirt cheap. Almost everybody ends up getting their lumber at Home Depot for some odd reason, but there are lumber yards here in the valley as well.
So where do you get these deals? So the main source of it, let's say you've done 12 to 14 so far. What was the main source?
Oh, to find the houses in general?
Yes.
Most of them were from realtors, believe it or not.
Okay.
It was a realtor said, hey, I have this pocket listing. Do you want it? And we'd go check it out and grab it. The very first one I did was from a friend of ours in the industry. And they said, well, here, start with this one. We actually got 2 from her. Um, Wholesalers on a couple, because a year or 2 ago wholesalers were doing really well and the margins were there. Not so much right now as far as a flipper goes,
Uh,
unless if you fix and flip and you have your systems in place and you really know what you're doing, rock on with the wholesalers. Just let them keep bringing you the properties. But if you're flipping 6 or 7 a year, you're not flipping enough to get their interest where you're getting really good deals. You really need to turn over 2 to 3 a month, honestly. And if you don't have those kind of crews in place where you can just rotate, you really got to be careful of your numbers. Well, wholesalers and realtors are the primary sources.
so what is the best investment you have done?
It would have been that Virginia property. It was a huge, huge risk because it was a 1,000 square foot little cottage type thing, and we doubled it. So it went from 1,000 feet to over 2,000, close to 2,400 square feet. Because that particular, and you had to run the comps, and we did the numbers over and over and over again. Do we save this house or let it go? Do we save it or let it go? Well, if we save it, what if we did this, this, or this? And then you have to create your exit strategies. We knew we weren't going to rent it. We were either going to flip it ourselves at the size that it was, or we were going to rehab it and double the size, which is what we ended up doing. It came out super beautiful, and it was about $100,000 profit. It took too long, so some of that profit kind of faded. That's the thing, is you got to get your systems. And when I say systems, whatever, because I wanted to throat punch people up, you got to have your systems. Like, what does that mean? But basically, you need to have your crews, and your crews need to be super consistent, predictable, and reliable. And I know a couple of people in the industry where their crews are like clockwork, in and out, super fast. She makes tons of money. And then I know other people in the industry where their crews are just not predictable and they drag. And that makes it difficult to live day to day. You know what I mean?
Great, great. So you receive many leads every day, I guess, right? So how do you decide, yes, this is the one to go? What do you look for mainly?
Well, there's a few things. The area,
Right.
the margin, because even if there's a great margin, but the area is super risky, I'm going to take back that margin a little bit. So even though a wholesaler says, oh, it's 350 in this area. And when I run my numbers and I'm like, I'm not getting barely 320 because they went across a major freeway or they went into a different neighborhood altogether. It's like, you can't do that. I, I'm very, very conservative. Within a quarter mile, sold within 6 months. If I can't find anything in a quarter mile, I'll go to a half. If I can't find anything in a half, I'll go to a mile. But I try not to go over major crossroads. So no major avenues, no, not Indian School or Camelback, no jumping across those streets.
All right.
And I'll try to stay really, really close. So, and I run my numbers. I have a business model. If there's at least 70,000, in my opinion, for profit, then I'll go for it. Yeah.
What are the red flags you look for while looking into a property?
The age of the home.
Okay.
If it's before 79, now I got to pay attention to asbestos and lead paint. If it's before the 50s or the 30s or the 20s, now I'm looking for aluminum and knob and tubing and weird stuff like that that I really don't want to deal with. Just recently, a business partner of mine just flipped a house in a pretty rough little hood, and it was so old. It's down by Garfield, down in that area. It's so old. The electric that was arcing inside the wall, so there was these little I mean, it was bad. It was bad. And I'm like, how did this house not burn down? But that's more money, like the age of the home, it's more money out of your pocket. You got to be really careful.
So how do you put your own money in this, or you raise money, or get it from hard money? How do you work usually?
A little bit of everything.
All right.
So hard money is the main one, but then you have to come up with that gap, right?
Mhm.
So then inquiring inside the community to look for gap. So then I start to raise capital. So then I start asking different people using my own, which I don't do anymore, but I did. So yeah, you end up tapping all the resources. Use your own, borrow it from inside the community, hard money lenders, and we've got a couple of really good hard money lenders.
So with the COVID situation and everything, what do you think where the market is and where it is heading to? I see it is in
Yeah,
the super seller market right now. Where are we heading?
nobody can really tell. But with the feedback from the marketing, and I primarily watch the Cromford report. And the Cromford report is actually sent to me by Mary Sayer at Great American Title. She's
Right.
always been a godsend. It does cost money. So with that being said, I kind of watch a couple of people in the industry to see how they're reporting on it. I do get a Monday quarterback, which is Elliott, and that's another market approach, another market analysis, if you will. Nobody's really saying up, down, or indifferent. Nobody's saying up, but yet we're still going up. And nobody's saying down because it's a seller's market, so we're still going up. But everybody wants to say down, but nobody can really prove that it's going to go down because it's still going up.
You know,
So it's like,
they're positive, but I don't know how long it's going to sustain that. So
yeah, and everybody's like, yeah, as soon as all these deferments that everybody's doing, if you're deferring your government loan on your house, your mortgage, if you're deferring credit card payments, if you're deferring other loans, other payments, how is this deferment of all these payments finally going to come into, you know what I mean? Like it should be interesting. It should be interesting. We're in very, very interesting times, but just pay attention, watch your Cromford report, watch your other real estate, but get 2 to 3 different reports. I never rely on just one. I get feedback from a few.
that
And
makes
then but yeah, you're right, Sarath. We're in a seller's market. We're really, really, really blessed. The biggest tripping point, from what I understand, is the banks are holding back funding just a little bit for some of these builders that are building like apartment complexes and mass building. They're holding funding back a little bit. So
right.
that's kind of slowed down the building of those massive, you've probably seen it, like 75th Avenue and Bell. There's a huge apartment complex going on the south side of Bell right there. Unbelievable. When I saw it, I was like, holy mother, it's huge. So that's the only drawback so far, and I think that's temporary. I think if we go down, and this is my humble opinion, if we go down 10 to 15% in the market, I think we're going to see a If we go down, it's going to be a little bit, but it won't be significant. Real estate investing right now couldn't be richer. Like, it just couldn't be richer with opportunities. It really is crazy.
So do you do single family only or multifamily too?
I've only done single family. Almost did multifamily. Almost pulled the trigger on that and I didn't.
Marsha, between single family and multifamily flips or anything?
Multifamily flips is more of a opportunity for you to create passive income. It's more of an opportunity to create a larger profit. So you can go in and, like, you know how in the valley there's a lot of those 4 and 8, they're just strips, and there's 4 to 8 of them, and it's just apartments, 4
Yeah.
to 8 of them. Those
Yes.
little puppies are cash cows. You go in there and get those all gutted and cleaned up and put them back on the market. You make quite a bit of profit on those. And there was a gentleman in our group, Sean Wade. He made profit on quite a few of those, but he had the backing to be able to do that, because that's the other part. Now your gap funding is way bigger.
So you said you're looking into the notes and all that, right? Yeah. Could you please share what is so most interesting about notes?
It's a $1 trillion business instead of a $1 billion business.
Wow.
Notes is far more lucrative in the real estate investing industry. There's more to be had, there's more opportunities, and there's way more money. But it is difficult for my brain because it's all numbers. So I'm still learning the numbers, non-performing notes.
What are your main exit strategies on this? Do you fix and flip it, or do you fix
That
and
is
put it as a rentals, or
that's the
what's your
primary is flipping. Just
flipping?
flip it and put the profit in the bank. Um, haven't really come across any of the ones that we have flipped. None of them were really like super awesome for renting, you know.
Right.
The passive income just was like me, marginal. So primarily fix and flip it, put the profit in back into the business. Multifamily, I would, consider renting. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not interested in single family home rentals, although that's about to get super interesting.
Have you done wholesaling?
I have. I have. That property in Virginia, that was actually a wholesale property. I literally wholesaled that and then stepped away from it.
Can we know how you found that?
I went door knocking one by one.
Wow.
It was a pre-foreclosure list
Right.
that I had generated on my own. And I'm like, all right, well, let's go try them out. I grabbed my daughter. She happened to be available, so she went with me. So as I was door knocking, I was also putting up bandit signs. Avoid foreclosure. Call this number for 10 ways to stay. Um, Nobody called those signs, so not a super awesome strategy. But as I was door knocking, I did finally reach a homeowner, and it's just timing. It's just, you just knock over and over and over until they're there. And the particular house I got under contract and wholesaled, many of the people inside the community that I'm in had also been to that property. I just happened to catch the homeowner outside. And then I just built rapport and hung out and tried to help her stay in the house. They'd been there for 25 years, gave her several options to try to stay, but they had been struggling for about 5 to 6 years, hanging on by a thread. So I ended up buying it, getting it under contract and buying it.
So you said, did they stay back in their house?
They could not. They couldn't. They were so, I don't know how they got away with what they were doing for as long as they did. I'm like, wait, how did you do that? That's amazing that you haven't paid your mortgage in 2 years. But they were in and out of Chapter 13,
All right.
on and off, and they were an older couple. Chapter 13 is when a lawyer decides it's a good idea that you give them X amount of dollars and then they pay all your creditors. But the thing is, if you lose your job again, or if you have a health issue come up, which is what was occurring, then you go out of Chapter 13. It's like, okay, now I'm working. Now you go back into Chapter 13. Yeah, it was horrible. What they had been putting themselves through was really horrible. It was not a peaceful way of living. And honestly, I kept up with them for a little while, and they slowly stopped responding, but they were very, very, very happy where they ended up. They ended up in a house with air conditioning, which they did not have for the last 2 summers, and they were really, really starting to feel the heat. So they were super happy to be somewhere where they had air conditioning. They're really, really happy on that side of town, and they were scared to go to that side. They have access to everything and more. They're really, really, really happy. And that's what a lot of homeowners don't realize is they're holding on to a burning rope because they don't know what's on the other side. And that was part of building rapport. When you're wholesaling, you just have to create that peace of mind for them. And I helped her pack and I cried with her. And I just helped them move to I promise you there's peace on the other side because I've been through it. And there was peace on the other side. But you hold on because you don't know, get scared.
What is your ideal day look like, Marsha?
Ooh, my ideal day. Going through the pre-foreclosure list, hitting about 15 doors, but talking to 5 different homeowners, that would be ideal. And 3 of them are at their wits' end. And 3 of them are like, you know what? I've had enough. Will you please help me? Why, yes, I will. And it would be ideal if I could keep one of them in there and then make the other 2, a deal.
Right.
That would be ideal. Like I could save 1, but profit on 2.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you're helping them, right? Yeah,
Yes.
that's great. That's great. So most of my viewers are beginners or they want to get into real estate investing. Let's say they have $10,000. What is the best way they can invest to get into real estate?
That's a good question. At this point, with what I've learned and what I've been through, I have been through at least 8 different gurus. I have invested in at least 6 different softwares, and it boils down to one community that really does have the resources, the knowledge, and the mindset necessary to help and support each other. So with that being said, if you had $10,000, I would say put 2,000 down in this community to start with your education, and then 5,000 I would use it to loan it out as hard money. So lend it, make sure that's in black and white as well. Put it in black and white, what you want.
Yes.
And I would loan the 5. I would use 2 to purchase education and get into that particular community because we're now close to 500 members in that community. So there's a lot of resources. And then learn so you don't get burned. It really is a very convoluted, very multi-layered industry,
Yep.
and you get overwhelmed quick.
It seems to be easy, but there's a lot in there at the same time, right? And
Yeah,
above all, invest in yourself is a primary mantra to get into anything, as a matter of fact.
yeah,
Yeah, totally agree
yeah,
with you. Uh,
yeah,
so you said the $5,000 to lend, right? What do you mean?
yes. So let's say you're in this community and you show up and you show, because what 85% of success is what?
Sharing.
Showing up.
So
So
yeah,
you just keep showing up and you start to get to know a few people and you see their faces regularly and you're like, you know what? I want to work with Sarath. He's always there. He always shows up. So, and then Sarath one day goes, I found a house, but I need earnest money down. I need like 3,000 down or 5,000 down.
got it.
And then I have $5,000. I'll loan it to you for 10%, 12%, 15%,
All right.
because it's going to go right in and right out because it's earnest money, right?
With this, I have finished the basic questions. I'm going to ask you kind of a rapid questions, like, what do you think? What do you feel? Like, you can give it in a short answer. Okay.
Right on.
So best habit you're proud of,
Showing up.
best app or tool you use on the daily basis.
iOS, otherwise known as Real Flow.
Real
Hands down, the most comprehensive software, hands down.
great. Best book, blog, or podcast you would recommend.
Best book. Wow, that's a tough one. Think and Grow Rich.
by
Thinking, yeah.
Kiyosaki, right?
Napoleon Hill.
First thing you do every day in the morning when you wake up.
I meditate. I get up. Well, I make coffee, but then I sit on the back patio because I like to be as close to nature as I can. And then I meditate. I visualize what I want to come into my life.
That's a super way to start every day
Yeah.
morning. I totally
Yeah.
agree. Advice to 20 years old to yourself. What would you give?
If I was 20 years old, what advice would I give myself?
Yes.
I should have invested in Southwest Airlines when they told me to.
So,
Ah,
right.
no, the best advice outside of investing in Southwest Airlines, get out of your head and get into your life. Quit overthinking it. Just do it.
Name three most important things to you.
My family, my sense of joy is important to me, and authenticity.
Great. What is success means to you?
That I'm comfortable and I have a true sense of peace, which includes security. And when I say security, I mean like everything's paid for and I don't have to worry about anything.
Best quote you could think of right now.
If you think you are, then you are. If you think you're not, then you're not. I
Great.
can't quote it exactly, but
No,
it's I'm pretty sure it's from Henry Ford.
great. Great. What do you get inspired by every day?
Believe it or not, I have this like protagonistic personality and kind of a Norma Ray about me. And Norma Ray was a woman that just kind of like stood up and said, "Look, this is how it needs to be done. This is what we're." She was kind of like for the people, and I tend to be for the people. I'm very much a servant leader and very much out to change the world. It just brings me. I get super lit up helping other people, like kind of a justice thing, I guess.
Great. No, the lit thing.
Yeah,
What is lit?
like lit.
What is
Learn it, implement it, teach it.
Yeah, great, great. The last question I have. Life is, fill it up.
Glorious opportunity.
Great, great. Thank you so much, Marsha. You're such an
Absolutely.
inspiration, and we learned a lot. Thanks again for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.